Welcome to the Deep Dive. We take the sources you send us, break them down, and pull out the key stuff so you're always in the know without the hours of reading.
That's the idea.
Today, we're jumping into something pretty interesting in green building. The LEED V5 Biodiverse Habitat Credit, specifically for new construction.
Yeah, we've got some excerpts here from LEED5 Biodiverse Habitat Credit explained.
And our goal, really, is to understand how new buildings can actually, help local ecosystems.
Yeah.
Maybe even reverse a biodiversity loss.
That sounds ambitious.
It does. And look, if you're finding this exploration of the world around us fascinating and want to delve deeper into other surprising areas, make sure to subscribe to hear more about this world.
Absolutely.
So, okay, a building helping biodiversity. That feels a bit backwards sometimes. What's the main idea here?
Well, yeah, the core aim, as our sources point out, it's not just about doing less harm,
Right. Minimizing impact.
It's about actively trying to make things better, ecologically speaking. So identifying and protecting any natural habitats already on the site. That's one part.
Okay, protect with
Then, maybe even more importantly, taking land that's already been disturbed, like previously built sites, and restoring it, bringing it back so it can support more life.
Okay. Active restoration.
Exactly. And there's also a real push to directly support pollinators and native species, really boost the local biodiversity.
So it's definitely more than just damage control. It's about pitching in ecologically.
That's a good way to put it.
And I see here projects can get up to 2 LEED points for this credit. Well, that's a decent incentive. How do they actually earn them?
Right. So the credit gives you two main ways to go about it. Two options.
Okay.
Option one focuses on habitat preservation and restoration. That one can get you either 1 or 2 points.
1 or 2. Okay.
Option two is all about bird-friendly design. That one's worth 1 point.
And projects can mix and match.
Yeah, you could go for one or the other, or both, depending on the project and, how many points you're aiming for.
Gotcha. Let's dig into that first one then, habitat preservation and restoration. The source mentions different rules for greenfield sites versus previously disturbed ones.
Yes, that's a really key difference in strategy.
How so?
For greenfield sites, that's land that hasn't really been developed before. The main thing is preservation.
Keeping it as it is.
Pretty much. To get 1 point, you need to permanently protect at least 40% of that greenfield area. Just rope it off, essentially, from any construction. Keep that natural value safe.
Okay, that makes intuitive sense. Protect the good stuff that's already there.
Yeah.
What about the sites that have already been built on or disturbed?
Right. For those sites, it flips. It's all about ecological restoration, bringing nature back.
How does that work, points-wise?
You can earn 1 point if you restore 20% of that disturbed area, or go for 2 points by restoring 40%.
Okay, 20% or 40%.
But here's an interesting catch. If your project site has any greenfield land on it, even a little bit, you have to commit to preserving 40% of that greenfield portion first, before you can even get points for restoring the disturbed part.
So preservation is kind of foundational if you have both types of land.
Exactly. It signals that protecting existing intact ecosystems is like the top priority.
Okay, so it might often be a combined strategy. Preserve some, restore some.
Very often, yes.
Now the source talks about specific requirements for restoring the actual soil and vegetation. This sounds like the real hands-on part of creating a habitat.
It really is. And these details are super important for making sure it actually works long-term.
Like the soil. What about the soil?
For soil, yeah, the focus is on getting it healthy again, functional, in all the areas you disturbed and planned to plant.
Makes sense.
What's interesting is the restrictions on bringing in new soil. They discourage using soil from, say, other undeveloped sites or prime farmland.
Really? Why is that?
Well, it's about not degrading other ecosystems to fix yours. They even advise against sphagnum peat moss because harvesting it is pretty damaging.
Huh? I wouldn't have thought of that level of detail for soil sourcing.
Right. And any soil you do bring in should ideally match the function of the original soil on your site. Keep it similar.
Okay, but vegetated roofs are different.
Yeah, green roofs are exempt from those specific soil rules. They have their own kind of system.
Wow, okay. That really shows how interconnected things are. What about the plants? The vegetation part?
The vegetation rules are also quite specific. The goal is resilient, beneficial habitats.
So what kind of plants?
You have to prioritize native species, the ones that naturally belong there, or adapted species.
Adapted meaning?
Meaning non-native, but ones that are proven to do well in the local climate without becoming invasive weeds. Big difference.
Right, non-invasive is key.
Definitely. And you need diversity. Usually at least 10 different native or adapted species that fit the local ecoregion. And a mix of types, trees, shrubs, ground cover.
A whole little ecosystem.
That's the aim. Though the ground cover bit can be waived for projects with 0 lot lines, like buildings right up to the pavement.
Okay. And I saw something about pollinator zones. That seems really timely given all the talk about bees and insects.
Absolutely essential. Yeah, the credit actually requires you to include at least 110 square feet dedicated to native flowering plants.
Just scattered around.
No, grouped together, clustered, so pollinators can find them easily, like a little refueling station.
That's neat.
And importantly, these zones have to be marked with signs.
Oh, way signs.
Well, partly to protect them so people don't accidentally weed whack the pollinator garden, but also to raise awareness, let people know why it's there.
That's smart. Education built right in. Okay, let's switch gears to option 2. Bird-friendly design. This is purely about stopping birds hitting windows, yeah.
Correct. Bird collisions with buildings are a huge problem, kill millions of birds, especially during migration.
So how does the credit address it?
This option gives you a point if you use bird-friendly glass in the building design.
What makes glass bird-friendly?
It's about its visibility to birds. The requirement is to use glass with a threat factor of 30 or less. That rating comes from the American Bird Conservancy. Lower number means safer for birds.
A threat factor. Okay. And does this have to be all the glass on the building? That sounds expensive.
No, not necessarily the entire building, though that would be best, of course. The credit targets the highest risk areas.
Which are?
Basically, all glass up to 50 feet from the ground. That includes regular windows and also spandrel glass, the opaque panels between floors.
Ah, yeah, those can look like reflections of sky or trees.
Exactly. Very confusing for birds. Also, glass up to 20 feet from any green roof surface. And glass used for things like guardrails or windshields at any height.
Why those specific heights?
Research shows that's where most collisions happen. Lower levels and near vegetation like green roofs where birds might be foraging or taking shelter.
Okay, so a targeted approach based on risk. It's interesting how these two options, habitat and bird safety, kind of work together under one credit. Different angles on biodiversity.
It really is. And if you zoom out, you see the bigger picture here. It's a shift in thinking, isn't it?
How so?
Moving away from just do less harm when building towards designing projects that actually give something back to the local ecology.
A net positive contribution.
That's the goal. The guidance we looked at even recommends bringing in local ecologists, native plant specialists early on.
Right, using real expertise.
Yeah, because a local expert might spot something crucial, like a rare plant or a habitat needed by a specific local animal that a generic checklist would totally miss. That makes the effort much more meaningful than just, ticking boxes.
That makes perfect sense. It's about genuine ecological benefit, not just points. I also noticed a point about saving topsoil during construction.
Yes, preventing topsoil loss and reusing it on site.
Seems small, but I guess it matters.
Oh, hugely. Topsoil isn't just dirt, it's alive, full of microbes, nutrients, everything plants need to get established. Saving and reusing it is fundamental for restoration, way better than trying to fix depleted subsoil later.
Right, build on a good foundation.
Yeah.
So really, for anyone doing new construction, this LEED credit offers a clear path to make a positive difference.
Absolutely. You prioritize saving existing nature, you actively restore disturbed areas with the right native plants for pollinators, and you make your building safer for birds. It transforms the site from potentially barren land into something functioning, something supportive.
Okay, so let's quickly recap the key takeaways. The LEED V5 Biodiverse Habitat credit gives up to 2 points.
Right.
Path 1 is either saving at least 40% of existing greenfield space or restoring 20% or 40% of previously developed land. And if you have both, you have to save the greenfield first.
And that restoration part hinges on healthy soil and planting diverse, native, or adapted, non-invasive species, plus those dedicated pollinator zones.
Got it. Path 2 is that single point for using bird-safe glass, the low-threat factor stuff.
Especially on lower floors, near green roofs, and specific features like railings, the high-risk zones.
It really covers a lot of ground, from the soil up to the facade.
It does. The overall goal is turning construction sites into ecosystems that actually function and support life.
Which brings us to a final thought for you, the listener. Think about the impact even smaller projects, maybe renovations, could have on local biodiversity. How could these ideas, preserving nature, restoring habitats, using native plants, making things safer for wildlife, apply maybe even in your own backyard or community, beyond just big LED-certified buildings? What other innovative ways could we weave ecological thinking even deeper into how we build and live?
That's a great question to ponder.
Indeed. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into biodiverse habitats and want to explore other fascinating topics with us, subscribe now to hear more about this world.